Good morning, you're watching A News. I'm Dilek Tuna. Here are the top stories for the hour. 3 officers were fatally shot and 2 wounded in Pennsylvania. The Fed lowers interest rates and signals more cuts ahead. Pakistan and Saudi Arabia signed a defence agreement to treat an attack on one as an attack on both. Three law enforcement officers were killed and 2 others were wounded in a shooting in the US state of Pennsylvania on Wednesday afternoon. And the suspect is also dead, the state police commissioner has said. Authorities said officers were at the scene for an investigation that had begun the day before. The 2 surviving officers are in critical but stable condition at Wellspan York Hospital. Police shot the suspect. Police have not shared many of the details because the investigation is ongoing. All Pennsylvania state flags will be lowered at all public buildings and grounds throughout the Commonwealth. US President Donald Trump's second state visit to Britain moves from royal pageantry to political talks today, after his plane narrowly avoided a mid-air collision over New York earlier this week. He will meet Prime Minister Keir Starmer to discuss Ukraine, trade and Palestinian statehood.
A near miss involving US President Donald Trump's aircraft over New York has set an unusual backdrop to his second state visit to Britain, which now moves from pageantry to politics. Air traffic controllers were forced to divert a Spirit Airlines jet earlier this week after it flew too close to Air Force One. On Thursday, Trump will meet Prime Minister Keir Starmer at Chequers for high-stakes talks following a day of royal ceremony capped by a state banquet at Windsor Castle hosted by King Charles III. The agenda is expected to cover Ukraine, transatlantic security and trade, as well as Britain's reported plans to recognise Palestinian statehood, an issue that could expose tensions with Washington. Economic cooperation will also feature prominently, with billions in US investment already pledged and hopes for further tariff relief. Trump, who praised the Anglo-American bond as irreplaceable and unbreakable during Wednesday's banquet, now faces the task of translating warm words into concrete agreements at Chequers.
NATO forces put on a display of firepower in Poland on Wednesday, with tanks, helicopters and jets taking part. The exercise, codenamed Iron Gate, coincided with the joint Russian-Belarusian Zapad drills across the border in Belarus. A large-scale military exercise happening at the Orsiz training ground, situated roughly 100 kilometers from the strategically critical Suwalki corridor. The Polish military said the exercises, part of a wider series of drills called Iron Defender, focused on the ability to defend Poland in the event of an attack from the east. Iron Gate featured both Polish and Allied troops, including the US Army's V Corps. NATO has strengthened its security to safeguard undersea infrastructure since a suspected sabotage in January this year in the Baltic Sea. The alliance now deploys air and naval patrols and warns that attacks will not go unpunished.
A lot of what we rely on for our daily lives lies under the sea, such as power lines, data cables and pipelines. These could be prone to suspected sabotage attacks, particularly in the North and Baltic Seas, according to NATO, which has increased its security in the area after a suspected sabotage attack in January and in previous years. These systems carry gas, electricity, more than $10 trillion in daily financial transactions, and 95% of global internet traffic, making them essential for energy supply, finance, communications and trade. Damage to these networks could cut power, disrupt the internet, halt financial operations and affect shipping, marking them as a high priority target for protection. But this year, NATO has stepped up its surveillance with enhanced air and naval patrols. Ships that pass near key sites are monitored and questioned if suspicious, while pipelines and cables are checked using sonar, drones and divers. This is not the first time such incidents have occurred. Previous damage has been reported in various locations, and similar operations were announced by NATO earlier this year. A new centre has been set up in Northwood in the UK, within NATO's Maritime Command, to protect critical undersea infrastructure, to facilitate operations, and to send forces to protect these critical systems. It's all managed by a special team at NATO headquarters in Brussels.
Latvian President Edgars Rinkēvičs has urged NATO members to develop anti-drone defence systems following Russian drone incursions into Polish airspace. His remarks came as NATO launched Eastern Sentry, a new mission to strengthen Europe's eastern flank. Rinkēvičs, who was speaking alongside Finnish President Alexander Stubb, said the incident was no accident and exposed gaps in NATO's counter-drone defence. As Russian drone attacks and incursions escalate, the EU is responding with billions in defence spending and bold new strategies. From Brussels to the Baltic states, Europe is preparing for a drone-dominated battlefield. Our Anita Sharma reports with more from Netherlands.
Welcome to This Day in Europe, as the bloc recalibrates its security playbook in the face of growing threats from the east. Brussels is pushing forward with a €6 billion drone wall along its borders. Ukraine is being folded into Europe's defenses, and leaders from Berlin to Vilnius are sounding the alarm and preparing the next generation. The EU plans to create a continent-wide counter-drone shield blending radar, jamming systems, and interceptor drones co-developed with Ukraine. It's part of the bloc's wider security action for Europe, or SAFE, a defense loan program worth up to €100 billion. The initiative is seen as Europe's response to Russia's escalating drone and missile attacks on Ukraine and its neighbors. The drone wall isn't just about hardware, though. In Lithuania, officials are opening 9 new drone training schools along the eastern frontier, where both children and adults are being taught how to operate drones from civilian use to defense applications. For Vilnius, it's about resilience, a society-wide response to modern warfare. Supporters see these steps as long overdue. Drones have become the new artillery, low cost, hard to defend against, and capable of crippling energy networks or frontline armor. By pooling Ukrainian battlefield know-how with European financing, Brussels hopes to get ahead of the threat. But critics warn of risks. Fragmented procurement could undermine interoperability, while the sheer cost, billions in new loans, raises questions about sustainability. And Moscow is likely to view these moves as deeper NATO integration, raising the stakes in an already tense confrontation. The urgency was underlined in Berlin today when German Chancellor Friedrich Merz told Parliament Russian drone incursions into Polish and Romanian airspace are not accidents, but part of a, quote, long-term campaign of sabotage designed to destabilize Europe's free societies. Merz warned against any settlement that would trade Ukraine's sovereignty for peace, insisting such deals would embolden Moscow. Meanwhile, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen says a 19th package of sanctions against Russia will soon be unveiled. It will target crypto, banks, and energy. She says she had a good call with U.S. President Trump on Tuesday and pressed him for continued U.S. support on sanctions against Russia. From von der Leyen's diplomacy with D.C. to Merz's stark warnings in Berlin and Lithuanian schoolchildren learning drone skills, Europe is sending one message. It's preparing for a future in which drones are central to both conflict and defense. For A News, I'm Anita Sharma reporting from the Netherlands.
The European Commission has proposed suspending free trade arrangements for Israeli goods in response to the ongoing war in Gaza. However, the move currently lacks the support needed from EU member states to take effect. EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas also outlined sanctions targeting 2 Israeli ministers, violent settlers and Hamas members, stating that the goal is not to punish Israel but to improve the humanitarian situation in Gaza.
Today in the college we also addressed the war in Gaza. Israeli government's push into Gaza City is a new escalation of the war and will further deepen the humanitarian crisis. Today, I presented a robust package of sanctions of Hamas terrorists, extremist ministers in the Israeli government, and violent settlers and entities supporting the impunity going on in the West Bank. The Commission adopted a proposal to partially suspend trade concessions.
The Federal Reserve cut its benchmark interest rate on Wednesday for the first time since December and signalled more cuts are likely this year. That will put in a range of 4% to 4.25%, the lowest level since late 2022. A cut had been widely expected since the jobs report issued at the beginning of August, which showed a sharp deterioration in job growth. Wednesday's cut was supported by 11 of the 12 voting members on the Fed's committee. The move, the bank's first rate cut since last December, is expected to kick off a series of additional reductions in the months ahead, which should help bring down borrowing costs across the US. The Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi and the Foreign Minister of France, Jean-Noel Barrot, held a telephone conversation on likely reimposition of UN nuclear sanctions, while Tehran has tabled a draft resolution at the IAEA calling for prohibition of attacks on the nuclear facilities under UN safeguards. Our correspondent Tura Shiraliliu has more.
Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi and his French counterpart Jean-Noel Barrot discussed the move by France, Germany and the UK, referring their dispute with Tehran to the Security Council, demanding the snapback or return of the sanctions against Tehran's nuclear program. According to a Foreign Ministry press release, Araghchi told Barrot that activation of the snapback mechanism by the European Troika is devoid of any political and legal significance and is aimed at increasing the tension and crisis. He said that Tehran has always considered diplomacy to be the only way to resolve international issues, including its nuclear program, based on a fair and balanced solution that ensures mutual interests. Iran's top diplomat recalled the agreement reached between Tehran and the International Atomic Energy Agency IAEA in Egypt last week regarding a new modality of bilateral cooperation in the wake of attacks on its nuclear sites by Israel and US last June. Foreign Ministry spokesman Ismail Baghai told a weekly press conference that Araghchi will hold a joint phone talk with the E3 foreign ministers and EU foreign policy chief today. In the meantime, Iran has tabled a draft resolution to be discussed at the ongoing IAEA General Conference in Vienna on the prohibition of attacks against nuclear sites under the UN agency safeguards. The Foreign Ministry announced that Iran, along with China, Russia, Venezuela, Nicaragua, and Belarus, have submitted the draft resolution in a bid to uphold the integrity of UN Charter, IAEA Statute, and the Non-Proliferation Treaty, NPT. The spokesman of the Atomic Energy Organization of Iran, Behruz Kamalvandi, who is in Vienna to take part at the IAEA annual conference, said the United States has threatened the UN nuclear watchdog of cutting off its financial support if the draft resolution is passed. Also, Iran's envoy to international organizations in Vienna, Reza Najafi, said the General Conference will discuss the draft resolution on Thursday afternoon or Friday morning, expressing the hope that independent countries will support it. Turat Shiralilu, reporting for A News TV, Tehran.
Saudi Arabia and nuclear-armed Pakistan signed a mutual defence pact on Wednesday. The deal strengthens their security ties and tensions in the region rise. During his visit to Riyadh, Sharif met bin Salman at the Al Yamama Palace. The two delegations discussed the historic and strategic ties between their countries and explored areas for joint cooperation. The agreement, aimed at strengthening defence collaboration and enhancing joint action against any attacks, underscores that an assault on one party will be considered an attack on both. It also seeks to boost security and promote peace and stability in the region and globally. Uzbek lawmakers have approved a draft bill paving the way to introduce Islamic banking. The move aims to boost financial inclusion for millions who avoid conventional banks for religious reasons and to attract billions in investment from the Gulf. Our Sevil Rajapova reports from Tashkent.
The Legislative Chamber of the Oli Majlis has adopted in the first reading a draft law on the introduction of Islamic banking. The document provides for amendments to the tax code, the civil code and 8 other laws. In particular, the draft law introduces legal definitions such as Islamic bank, financial operations and standards, and investment deposit. It also establishes a licensing procedure for Islamic banking activities and sets specific requirements for obtaining such licenses. In addition, the law defines which financial operations can be carried out by banks holding an Islamic banking license, ensuring clarity and regulatory oversight. Experts highlight several reasons behind this initiative. Surveys show that up to 68% of the population and 60% of businesses currently avoid conventional banks for religious reasons, demonstrating a demand for Sharia-compliant services. With more than 90% of Uzbekistan's population identifying as Muslim, financial inclusion is the key motivation behind this reform. Another driver is investment. Officials estimate that the adoption of Islamic banking could unlock up to $5 billion annually in financing for local businesses and projects. This is expected to attract capital from Gulf countries such as the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia, where Sharia-compliant finance dominates, creating long-term partnerships and stronger economic ties. Earlier discussions on this draft law were held at government and expert levels. Officials noted that the neighboring Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan have already implemented Islamic banking frameworks, making Uzbekistan's move both timely and regionally significant. The central bank emphasized that Islamic banking will not replace conventional banking, but will work alongside it, giving businesses and individuals broader choices in managing their finances. It is Sevil Rajapova reporting from Tashkent, Uzbekistan, A News.
Armenia's National Assembly Speaker Alan Simonyan and Deputy Speaker Akop Arshakyan met Su Zhu, Vice Chair of China's 14th National Committee. On the 17th of September, Su Zhu and her team arrived in Armenia and were welcomed at Zvartnots Airport. They discussed political dialogue and parliamentary cooperation. They talked about the economy, technology and energy. They also discussed the engineering town and academic town projects and the Armenia-Azerbaijan peace process, including the Crossroads of Peace initiative. Su Zhu thanked the hosts, said 2025 was a good year for relations, and praised Armenia's support for the One China principle. They also discussed future cooperation. Armenia and France have held political consultations in Paris, according to the Armenian Foreign Ministry. The two sides reviewed cooperation in defence, economy, culture and infrastructure, and also discussed plans to expand ties. They discussed coordination with international organisations and Armenia's partnership with the European Union. Regional issues, including normalisation with Azerbaijan and Turkey, were also on the agenda. EU Enlargement Commissioner Marta Kos will visit Baku on Thursday. The trip comes amid ongoing efforts toward an Armenia-Azerbaijan peace deal and as Brussels seeks to deepen its role in regional connectivity under the EU's Black Sea strategy. During the meetings in Baku, Commissioner Kos will discuss shared interests such as energy, transport and demining activities. She will also visit the town of Akdam to meet people involved in demining projects. The EU is a leading donor in this field, providing equipment, assistance to mine victims and support to strengthen the Azerbaijan National Agency for Mine Action. Over in Georgia, officials have announced an arrest in a multi-billion-dollar money laundering scheme, while lawmakers are pushing forward with sweeping new anti-corruption laws. For all the details, we go to Tbilisi and our Nini Nikolashvili.
The prosecutor's office has announced the arrest of a key suspect accused of laundering massive sums of money through an organized criminal group between 2022 and 2024. According to investigators, the scam involved disguising millions of dollars and euros of undocumented origin as legitimate income through a licensed currency exchange point. The group is alleged to have systematically smuggled foreign currency from neighboring countries, bypassing customs by using hidden compartments in vehicles. The funds were then funneled through commercial banks, backed by falsified documents, before being reinvested in real estate, movable property, and other sectors of the economy. Authorities estimate that more than $624 million and 35 million euros were laundered in this way. A large amount of cash has already been seized, and the prosecutors, together with the State Security Service, continue to trace assets and enforce measures to secure criminally derived funds. Meanwhile, in Parliament, the ruling Georgian Dream Party is moving forward with amendments to the law on combating corruption. The proposed changes would require public officials, political figures, and employees of state enterprises convicted of financial or official crimes to submit annual asset declarations for 30 years following their convictions. Supporters of the initiative argue that such long-term monitoring will prevent misappropriated wealth from being legitimized or used for personal gain, even after prison terms are served. Critics, however, caution that the effectiveness of these reforms will depend on impartial enforcement, noting the potential risk of using extended monitoring as a political instrument. It's Nini Nikolashvili reporting from Tbilisi, A News.
Georgia has officially completed repayment of its debt to Russia and 6 other Paris Club creditor nations. The original loans, totaling $160 million and taken before 1999, were part of a 2004 restructuring agreement. The plan allowed Georgia to repay the debt over 20 years. With interest, Georgia has now paid back more than $225 million. According to the country's finance ministry, as of August this year, Georgia's total public debt stands at just over $9 billion, with France, now the largest creditor, owed more than $850 million. Turkey's premier technology and aerospace festival, Teknofest, has kicked off in Istanbul, drawing tech enthusiasts, innovators and visitors from across the world. The 5-day event promises everything from cutting-edge competitions to dazzling airshows.
Teknofest opened its doors on Wednesday in Istanbul, bringing together technology lovers, innovators and entrepreneurs. The event is organised by the Turkish Technology Team Foundation and Turkish Industry and Technology Ministry, with the support of dozens of government agencies, private sector partners and universities. At the opening ceremony, Selçuk Bayraktar, chairman of the Teknofest Board of Directors, highlighted the significance of innovation.
Bizler burada sadece parlak fikirleri ve yeni icatları görmüyoruz.
At Teknofest, we don't just see brilliant ideas and new inventions. We also see the skilled hands and minds that turn those ideas into steel, code, and products. Every single project in these competitions is a harbinger of the technology companies that will shape tomorrow's world.
Teknoloji şirketlerinin habercisidir.
Since its launch in 2018, Teknofest has grown into one of the world's leading technology events. This year's program features 58 main competition categories and 137 subcategories. Offering a platform for participants to showcase their knowledge and breakthroughs. Visitors are welcomed not only with competitions, but also with air shows, immersive simulation areas, workshops, exhibits, a planetarium, trade fair activities, and even student flight events, all designed to inspire the next generation of innovators. The festival will continue through to Sunday, and admission is free for those who apply via the official Teknofest website. Traditionally, the event takes place in Istanbul during odd-numbered years and in other Turkish cities during even-numbered years. It has also expanded abroad, with editions hosted in Azerbaijan and the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus. Just last month, Teknofest's maritime edition, Blue Homeland, was held in Istanbul. Last year's festival in the southern city of Adana attracted around 1.1 million visitors, pushing total attendance to nearly 11 million since its inception. Istanbul says it's again become the epicenter of technology, innovation and inspiration as Teknofest continues to soar higher each year.
China has launched its first direct breakbulk shipping route from Zhuhai to Peru's Chancay airport. This is a major step in the Belt and Road Initiative's expansion into Latin America and a move which strengthens China-Peru economic ties and boosts regional investment. Our Manur Maktoum has more from Beijing.
China has launched its first breakbulk shipping route from Suzhou to Peru's Chancay port, marking a milestone in the Belt and Road Initiative's expansion into Latin America. The inaugural voyage, operated by COSCO Shipping, departed from Suzhou in Jiangxi province and is expected to reach Chancay in about 32 days. The vessel Greensop is carrying over 30,000 tons of cargo, including energy storage cabinets, jumbo bags, and grinding balls for mineral processing. The service will operate on a monthly basis, providing a faster and more efficient trade route between China and Peru. Chancay Port, a $3.5 billion joint venture between COSCO Shipping Ports and Peru's Vulcan Mining Company, was inaugurated last year and is equipped to handle large vessels. The new direct shipping route is expected to reduce transit time by about 5 days compared to traditional transshipment hubs, facilitating smoother trade. This development also aligns with China's strategy to enhance infrastructure in Latin America under the Belt and Road Initiative, strengthening economic connectivity between the regions. The launch of the Suzhou-Chancay trade route shows China's commitment to expanding its trade network and deepening economic bilateral ties with Latin America. By providing a streamlined and more cost-effective shipping option, the service is poised to boost trade volume and attract further investment, serving as a catalyst for increased economic collaboration between China and Peru. Manu Mathum, A News, Beijing.
Wednesday's UEFA Champions League matches delivered plenty of excitement across Europe. Bayern Munich, Liverpool and Paris Saint-Germain all recorded wins, while Slavia Praha played out a 2-2 draw with Bordeaux and Glimt.
The 2025-26 UEFA Champions League kicked off on Wednesday with thrilling action across Europe, highlighted by dominant wins from Bayern Munich, Liverpool and Paris Saint-Germain, and a dramatic draw for Slavia Praha. At the Allianz Arena, Bayern Munich defeated Chelsea 3-1, with Harry Kane scoring twice and Trevoh Chalobah adding an own goal. Cole Palmer scored for Chelsea, but it wasn't enough to prevent the German side from taking all 3 points. Liverpool edged Atletico Madrid 3-2 at Anfield, with Andy Robertson, Mohamed Salah and Virgil van Dijk playing key roles in securing the win in a tense contest. Paris Saint-Germain cruised to a 4-0 victory over Atalanta at Parc des Princes, dominating from start to finish. Marquinhos, Kvaratskhelia, Nuno Mendes and Gonzalo Ramos all scoring for the host team. In Prague, Slavia Praha and Bordeaux Glimt played out a 2-2 draw, with Nikita Haikin's crucial saves helping the Norwegian side earn a late equaliser. In other matches of the day, Olympiacos drew 0-0 with Paphos, while Ajax lost to Inter Milan 0-2. Looking ahead, Thursday features several key fixtures, including Manchester City versus Napoli, Newcastle United versus Barcelona, and Frankfurt versus Galatasaray, promising more excitement as Europe's elite clubs continue their early-stage campaigns.
That's the news update from us in Baku this morning. Stay tuned to A News for more.